Guys, it's Timmy here in San Diego for a work conference, San Diego, California, a long way from Indiana. Going to check out a arcade that's in the Gaslamp quarter here in downtown San Diego. So see what old tech we can find, cool old pins and games. This is three old tech dudes.
I recently had the opportunity to visit beautiful San Diego, California for a work-related conference. I had not flown since I was a young teenager, so this was definitely an adventure for me. After a crazy overnight layover in Las Vegas, I finally arrived in San Diego. It was, as you can see, quite a beautiful place, more so than I expected, honestly. I did a bit of research ahead of time on possible places I could visit for our 3OTD followers, preferably places I could reach on foot in the evenings. After tossing out a couple of thrift stores that I aimed too far away, as I didn't want to pay for an Uber or Lyft, I settled on checking out the Gaslamp coin-op game room. The first evening that I had time, I popped the address into Google Maps, which told me I had about 5 blocks to walk to get there. So off I went, an Indiana country boy walking the downtown streets of the 8th largest city in the country after dark. I ran across this group of kids along the way. They were raising money for more music studies, although I'm not sure what else they needed, as they were amazing.
Several blocks so far, I haven't died. It's a happening place. There's people everywhere. Kind of tough on an Indiana kid like me. I don't know anything about California, but I'll watch my back, I guess. Seems like it's a fairly safe town. Oh yeah, we finally made it.
So behind the center bar area at Coin-Op, which is a barcade, you have to be 21 to enter, there's this amazing 80s and 90s themed display. There's a lot here: band posters, stickers, stacks of NES, Super NES and Sega Genesis games, a working Nintendo 64, and all kinds of 80s and 90s toys and movie posters. I was intrigued that they had an Atari 5200 and its expensive trackball controller on display instead of the more common original Atari 2600, the one most people remember. The 5200 is certainly more impressive looking, particularly in size. Old Sanyo boombox of some sort here, very 80s. This appears to be a Tomy Omnibot, an RC robot with a built-in cassette deck. It's from about 1984. These old portable TVs had their CRTs removed and mirrors placed in them, making for an interesting wall decoration on another wall. Up on one wall they had a couple of pachinko machines. Thanks to 3OTD follower Greg for helping me identify what these were via a ham radio conversation we had recently. He owns a couple, or one of these, maybe a couple. Like most arcades, you gotta have a claw machine, and of course, good old Zoltar the fortune teller and a penny pincher. There's a great selection of older games with newer ones sprinkled in. I was excited to find two that were around my hometown back in the day, but we'll get back to that. This was my favorite place of all, a whole wall of pinball machines. These were mostly newer machines, although 3 of them were from the 90s. They have several of the amazing late model Stern pinball machines from the last couple of years. Again, we'll get back to that. Around the next corner I found the popular Dance Dance Revolution, the 90s classic NBA Jam, a sit-down racer, a huge retro-styled Space Invaders-like game, and a 4-player Pac Man Battle Royale. Photo booth, as well as other stuff like basketball and skee-ball games. First thing I had to do was check out this well-known 1989 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles beat 'em up. My hometown Walmart had one of these out front for a few years. Next I found this Super Mario Brothers arcade machine. This is technically called Versus Super Mario Brothers. It's the same as the original NES game, except it tracks high scores and has some additional player sprites, and also takes quarters to play, of course. But it's got harder enemies. It's got more enemies and it's got a lot more holes, so it's not exactly the same. It's like a modified version of the NES game, but it more or less runs on a Nintendo Entertainment System guts with some modifications to the ROM. Over here there's one of the deer hunting light gun games that were popular in the 90s and 2000s, as well as a Street Fighter II arcade, but of course Ms. Pac Man. You can hardly have a retro arcade without one of the original Pac Man machines. Next I had to check out Centipede, the only arcade golden era Atari arcade game I found here. This game was one of the old trackball control games that were popular at the time. Next to Centipede we had a Galaga. Not sure it was original Galaga, it didn't look like it was. And there was a Mortal Kombat 2, the original Tetris arcade machine, and Turbo Street Fighter 2. I had only run across a 1982 Q*bert in the wild once before, and while it was partially restored, it was not nearly as mint as this one seemed to be. Managed to get 10th place in score. And then later, 11th and 12th, couldn't beat my own score. Here we have a beautiful example of the arcade game that initially made the company Nintendo famous in America. This is also the game that introduced the video game character that became Mario, although in this game he was creatively known, or not, as Jumpman. Now, on to the pins. All the pins here were 1992 or newer. This Williams Tales of Arabian Nights is from 1996. It was fun. I'm a bit of a Williams fan. The oldest machine at coin-op game room Gaslamp was this 1992 Addams Family machine, based on the 1991 movie. With 20,270 produced, this is the best-selling pinball machine of all time. This good condition, a Williams Twilight Zone machine, is from 1993. Justin is our resident Ghostbusters superfan here at 30TD, and he's spoken of desiring to own this particular Stern machine, which debuted in 2016. I've encountered it twice now, once in a private collection and once here. It's fun and full of those quotes from one of the most quotable movies of all time. A lot of modern Stern pinball was represented here, all machines from just the last few years. Here's a 2017 release, Star Wars. Stern is pretty much the only pinball manufacturer at this point in time. This is a 2012 Stern, Marvel's X-Men. This is Stern's 2017 Marvel Guardians of the Galaxy. I liked this one. It had fun gameplay, plus a giant Groot head at the top of the playfield. This is a new this year Stern, the Munsters, based on the 1960s TV series. We saw some 8 or 9 of these set up for sale at the Louisville, Kentucky Arcade Expo earlier this year. You can have one of your own new if you have an extra $6.5 grand laying around to spend. Finally, I discovered a new one from my list of favorites, a 2016 Batman 66 machine from Stern. This is based on the campy 1966 Batman TV series. It is very well done, especially its audio and video clips from the series.
That's it for this week's episode of 3 Old Tech Dudes. Be sure to subscribe to us here on YouTube, like us on Facebook, just search for 3 Old Tech Dudes, on Twitter at 3 Old Tech Dudes 1. And check out our website at www.3oldtechdudes.com or email us at thedudes@3oldtechdudes.com.